hello, good people of the internet. It is I, Tommy Kelly, back from the ether, back from the darkness, back from taking a week off the podcast, which is not quite as dramatic as back from the darkness. So yeah, basically last week I just needed to take a break, and it wasn't really that doing a podcast or any of these things is like hugely taxing on your soul or takes up an awful lot of time, considering the way I do it as well, in that I just talk and I don't really edit it. I just put music and stuff together, so it's not a tremendous amount of time. But all those little things add up to being an awful lot of time, like doing the daily posts I do on Facebook, doing the different Patreon stuff, the website stuff, the podcast, the videos, the updates, all of these things in their kind of collective entirety add up to an awful lot of things. And what I was trying to do over the last while was to continue doing all I was doing without kind of taking a break. And basically I was just having less sleep, which is it's fun. But that's not me complaining in any way. Life is all good. Having a baby is cool. The actual baby bit of it's really easy. It's all the things that are around us that's the hard bit. He's a legend. So yeah, this week what I want to talk a bit about is how I think, or what's my worldview, my magic worldview on why the universe or life is the way it is, how it works, how it operates, and where magic fits in and all that. And it came from a recent friend of two instances. Recently, a friend of mine who I know from photography PM'd me or DM'd me on Facebook and says, what is this, what's the 47th? What exactly is magic? And not knowing at all where he lies on the spectrum of God bothering or atheism or any of these things, I don't really know how to start that conversation because I don't have any kind of focus point or any sort of signpost that'll go, right, at least I, where to start. And if you kind of start with someone who's, like, say, completely rational, it can sound, you can't help but just sounding completely and utterly insane when you start talking about these things. So it needs an awful lot of context, and you also have to explain things. Well, magic's like this, magic's like that, but that's not what I think. But I just have to tell you these things because that's what's the context of magic and all. So I just didn't know what way to approach it. So I just kind of said it's about making yourself a better person, which is how I approach what magic is for me anyway. But it's probably not a great descriptor of magic. So the second thing that happened is that another friend of mine was asking about doing a sort of an interview with me, and he just wanted to go over the different things of what magic was and my approach and my day-to-day life kind of thing. And it kind of got me again, even though I'm more aware of this guy's kind of feelings towards magic and stuff like that, again I didn't know what's the best way to approach that, or to answer that in its totality without either being sounding weird, which you're going to sound weird, or insane, which you're going to sound a bit insane, but actually answering it and having a thing. So what happened was I ended up having to really think about and kind of try to articulate in my own head, what is it that I believe about all these things, and where is the the map, the worldview, the cosmology, all of those things. And I want to preface this whole thing by saying this is how I feel today, and while this is probably how I have felt, and how my view of magic and the world has been for a long while, it is subject to changes and nuance, and every day is a different day. And if you're listening to this in 6 months and you've seen that I've said something completely different, that is my want, that is my will. People are allowed to change their mind. We have this huge thing in our culture that people aren't allowed to change their minds about things. That once you say something, even if you're 18, 19, 20, once you're an adult, say something, you kind of are under an obligation to remain with that thought for the rest of your life, or else you're seen as some sort of hypocrite or contradicting yourself. But you said this when you were 20 and now you're 65 and have a different view. Yeah, because I spent 45 years. I'm not 65. I may look it, but I'm not. But you spend time in the interim learning and changing your mind. Like, I've changed my mind about an awful lot of things. I wanted to be a rock star. I can't think of a more hellish existence than being a rock star now. But there's no way I could tell my 17-year-old self that. So yeah, so it's open to, I could possibly change this in the future, but this is how I view it now, and this is kind of where I'm coming from. So to get into it, my kind of cosmology, or what no, I'll get to that. My kind of thing is very based on a kind of an idealism, and idealism is the idea that essentially all of reality is within consciousness. Now, it's different from solipsism, which is the idea that everything exists just in my brain alone, and that I have no, that all of these things around me is just happening in my consciousness. Whereas idealism is it happens within a greater super consciousness, like rather than just that I am an aspect of, rather than solipsism, which is this is just me. I'm the center of the universe in many ways, and everything is just occurring in my own personal mind, sort of thing. So it's similar to solipsism, and I mean solipsism. I've never found a way to disprove it, for myself, because you could all be figments of my imagination, and where would my brain be situated? That like maybe I'm on some sort of Star Trek Enterprise holodeck, and this is all just a figment of that. You don't know. Like it's probably unlikely that it's a Star Trek holodeck, though. So the idealism, the theory that the essential nature of reality lies within consciousness. So what does that mean, and what do I mean by that? I mean that as opposed to reductionist materialism or rationalism, or that thing that Richard Dawkins would talk about, or any of these sort of superstar kind of scientists, populists of whatever, who all, or his names all escape me right now. Anyway, you know who I'm on about. They would say that the out there, the things we look at like as I look around this room, there's a bookshelf, there's books, there is loads of storage boxes, and Jordan Peterson would be extremely unhappy with me because the room is a bit of a mess. But it's like that stuff actually exists objectively outside of my head. That it's not just something in my brain. That the out there, like the sun actually exists as a thing outside of consciousness. That can be touched. Well, you could touch, felt, and looked at or whatever. But you still need some sort of consciousness to look at it if you're going to touch it or examine it and that kind of thing. So objective reality, from the reductionist materialist point of view, is that it all exists, and that consciousness has nothing to do with it. Whereas idealism would say, and this is my reading of it, this is my interpretation of idealism, other views are available, is that all of these things don't have an objective reality of their own. They're all subjective, but not just to me, to subjective to consciousness. So it's a bit more than the idea of, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around, does it make a sound? The answer to that is, of course, no, because sound is a vibration in ears. So if, or something similar. So if there is no one about here, then it doesn't make a sound. Again, other people have postulated answers to that are different from mine. But it's, so that it's that the reality relies on some sort of consciousness. Not that it relies on some sort of consciousness, because that's not what I mean, Basically, what I think of is consciousness is this big super, think of this in a really bad example, a big cloud, a huge big cloud sitting somewhere that's outside the universe, because it's not the universe. It's not contained within the universe. It's not physical. It's just big field of consciousness. And within that, we have points of focal, just points of focus. And these points of focus, in my case, happen to be Tommy Kelly. And this is my point of focus within this kind of huge consciousness. So everything that I see around me, everything I experience and everything is within this kind of big field of consciousness. Now, what's that mean? If you want to think of it as a kind of, it's like all those kind of examples you have from films, like it's the Matrix, or it's like a dream from Inception. Dream's probably a better one than the Matrix, because the Matrix implies there's something other outside. You can escape the Matrix. And I don't think that it's like a dream that's consciousness is having. That's what I feel like reality is. And it seems to, in some way, evolve with consciousness, in that there's kind of a thought came to me, and I don't know if this is true, but it's certainly, I don't, probably isn't true, but why not? That the more advanced humans get, the more complicated the universe has gotten along with it. So that in one sense you could have that every time man kind of steps up his game a bit, sorry for saying man, I mean humanity, in turn, the universe or consciousness has complicated the world a bit more. So a bad example would be that possibly at one stage the world, and again, just an idea, go with me, that the world was flat. And man became, that it started thinking, again, humanity started thinking a bit more, got a bit more advanced, a bit more things. So then the universe became a bit more complicated and a bit more expanded or whatever. And it's kind of always just that a bit further away than what humanity can grasp, or a single point of focus can grasp, so that it eventually became the planets and all of these type of things. But when consciousness was very early on, it maybe not, and that's a bad example. But it's just trying to illustrate the point of that. I feel that the universe, or whatever it is that we exist in, probably gets more complicated and complex as we develop and we become more complex, and see things more, and understand things better. That it kind of has to up its game each time to stay ahead of us. In one sense, you could see it as to keep up the illusion, to keep it going, to keep the game going. And another way it could just be that's maybe what it's doing. I don't know why this is happening. Like that, fundamentally, that it's the question I always ask people who have some sort of cosmology or some idea about life is, why did this start? And there's no good answer. And I certainly don't have a good answer. It could be, as Alan Watts often says, is that it's God, or playing hide and seek with itself. That it knows everything, so the only way to experience these things is to pretend it doesn't. Which is a nice, interesting thought, and fair dues to Alan Watts, I love him and all that kind of thing. But it's still, what's the point of that? Why would you do that other than you're bored? Just let's play this game, but that involves so much suffering and terribleness. It seems that, say, someone who went through some horrible times that found out that it was just God playing hide and seek, I don't think they'd be too impressed by that. But yeah, so you find yourself within this kind of matrix dream or whatever reality is, this idealized reality it is. And so then it asks the questions, then where do, say, other people come into this, or where the spirits, where the gods, where does magic and all this kind of come in? And again, these are all just kind of just ideas. They're not and kind of ways of looking at things, rather than I actually think this is like the very truth of the matter. But it's just a way of kind of encapsulating an idea or a feeling I have. It certainly feels at times that life is a game. So that hide and seek thing of Alan Watts, they may have something in it, but I don't think it's in the way of it's a hide and seek, and I also don't think it's a school. That's the whole theosophy, New Age thing, is that we're here to learn, or we're here to develop or to become, our ascended masters and all that kind of thing. While I definitely think there is a point that we're heading towards, and I do enjoy that thing of becoming the perfected person, and it is something that I use as a thing to to work towards, whatever. And the master in the 47s would be kind of an embodiment of that, as is that the HGA, the Holy Guardian Angel. In many ways, some people don't see it as that, but there is that kind of element to it, that it's the thing you're working towards, the perfected you, and that kind of thing. But then when people approach it, it's a school, I don't know if that's the case exactly as well, because it could be just a case that we're here to experience things, and rather than to learn in a kind of a school, kind of thing. Oh, you're learning how to be jealous in this lifetime, or you're learning how to overcome jealousy in this lifetime, or experience both sides of jealousy, where your father was a jealous person, you became a jealous person, but then you worked on it and now you're not a jealous person, or you're on the other end of jealous relationship. And it just seems kind of hokey or something like that, or just not, that doesn't seem to be pointing to it. But there does seem to be some sort of evolving to it, some sort of getting from one point, becoming greater, because that's how, how life seems like, from when you're a baby to an adult, all that you've learned, like all the stuff that, like, life has become way more complicated than it used to be. But again, it could be going back to what I was saying, is it's consciousness keeping up with you, or just you're aware of more of these complications or whatever. Like, all of the stuff I know about, say, philosophy and magic and history and stuff that I didn't know this time 10 years ago, doesn't mean that didn't exist. It was still there, but it wasn't in my pattern, or it wasn't, in my scope of what I knew. It's like when I learned how to about photography, it feels now that like I've always known that, but I haven't. It's like just over a year of having that knowledge, but it seems now embedded within me. So tangentially off again. Yeah, so the world feels like a game, but with this kind of some sort of learning thing involved. And a thought came to me recently, which I thought was really kind of cool. This whole thing of the multiverse, and that every single choice that's ever made plays out somewhere. And I was kind of thinking that'd be interesting to kind of, that would explain in many ways different things. Like if it was a case that every single thing you've ever done, um, or you've ever, every choice that you could have made, you have made it, whatever. That means that if we're a point of focus within those things, we're just a point of focus on one of those choices. And perhaps the game element is trying to find the right choices the whole way through. And you kind of feel sometimes, well, I do anyway, that when something happens and you know you've done it right, as if something is slotted into place in a very solid way. And that, like that, in a good thing, not in a kind of a blockage way. But it's like, yes, right, you've done that bit, you've passed the level, you've saved your game, so there's no going back, and you can move on. And almost like that kind of whole thing of like the Groundhog Day, the film, the Bill Murray film, where until he gets it right, gets it all right, he doesn't get to move on. And there does seem to be some sort of element of that. And I think it could be, if that's true, then it could be this whole kind of the multiplicity or the multiple universe, or all the different dimensions. And so you can kind of, you're weaving your way through these different things. And I know it certainly feels that if you are surrounding yourself with certain ideas or certain feelings, or, reading certain books or listening to certain people, that you seem to go into a different place. Like if I get very atheistic and very rational and very materialist and spend a couple of months doing that, it's almost as if I'm living in a different universe than I am when I'm living in my magical self universe, where everything's open to possibilities and the chaos and this kind of, all of this kind of stuff. And I often wonder, is that because I've aligned myself more to the person, that train that has moved into the atheist. So now I'm in it more in the atheistic universe. That the entire thing, because of every choice and everything that's ever existed, has the possibility that it can exist or is being played out somewhere, that I've moved more into that area of the map, say if you see it as a tree with all the branching off, the different thoughts and all that. So I'm now moved into this kind of thing. But when I'm more into the magic, I'm on the other side of the map, I follow this kind of pattern. And I think if it is a case, then you probably can't jump too much. Like you have to stay within certain bounds. Like there's probably, if this theory is to be true, there's probably a Tommy who did everything right, multi-millionaire, immensely happy. I don't know why millionaire is making me happy, but whatever it is. But whatever all the choices are, and he's there somewhere. And then there's another Tommy who's living on the streets and made terrible choices, who can't get anything right. It's a total failure. And even though technically, I suppose you could, because both of them exist at the same time, and time doesn't exist, everything happens in an instant. It may happen in sequence, but not in time. All of those things. That there's no possibility that he's going to jump from homeless to multimillionaire, happy castle, whatever that thing is on the other side of it. But you could probably jump in a certain sphere within his kind of thing. I know that's kind of very woo-woo and stuff, and that whole dimension jumping thing is not really what I'm on about too. It's kind of align yourself to these kind of things. But the only thing is, why there seems to be something in that is that there seems to be at times people know things that they can't possibly know about my life, had it been a case that I haven't been kind of moving around. And it's again that whole what's that thing where people think have changed, the Mandela effect. I'm not really a buyer of that. That just seems like people misremembering things more than anything else. But who knows things. So it's not that either. I'm not saying you're jumping into a entire new universe. You're jumping is a wrong word. You're moving towards yourself, towards different choices you've made, or whatever, rather than a whole new universe, whatever. But maybe there is fallout over all of those things. I don't know. That's just something that it feels to work like on some ways, in that the more things you surround yourself with, more ideas, the more beliefs, and the more that kind of things, that it seems that that's more what the universe becomes. And just that thing of what you focus on. And that could be just what you're focusing on, that could be just what you're surrounding about, but there seems to be a change to outside. Yeah, and this comes to a thing where you, which I don't like. And I think the multiverse idea kind of changed, keeps it away from that. It's this idea of people as non-player characters. Um, there's a thing that Edward Kelly was told by one of the angels, and it was that there's the same amount of people alive now that have been and ever will be, meaning that there's only a certain amount of people. And my reading of that is then that maybe that means that if the population has gone up exponentially since then, which it has, that an awful lot of these people may not be real. And it's an interesting thought to think about, that, you know, again, you can go into the whole Matrix thing of these are non-player characters. They're, you know, just programs that are around to kind of keep things running or put things in a certain way. I don't like it because it dehumanizes people in a certain way. It's very easy then to go, oh, look at all that travesty in the other side of the world where people are dying or children are being killed or any of those things. You go, it's just non-player characters. They're not real people anyway. And even if that was true, I don't think it's a good way to look at the world or approach life or whatever. It's certainly a dehumanization. But the multiplicity thing of the universe and the different choices and these different things, and you know, the what I'm talking about, where if I made a choice today and then there's 20 other choices coming from that and they all play out, then you're also, not only are you dealing with an infinite version of you at all times, you're also an infinite version of different people. So I mean, say you jump into or I don't like using that word, say you have moved into a different kind of area of your life that is more magic, then you're also going to be around the people who are more magic versions of the people you're around, and the more atheistic version around. Like, not always, but there's something that I can't quite grasp it at that seems true, that may just be Tommy, you know, not having his head together on it. So, looking at my notes. So, yeah, what are God, spirits, and all of these things? Well, this is the thing. So, like, to come back to the consciousness idea, and we're all situated in consciousness. This is all happening. This is like a dream within consciousness for some sort of game or some sort of learning or some sort of work towards being a perfected person. I've often thought is maybe we're all, you know, this is procreation, or how a God reproduces, in that he, she, it, whatever, non-gendered, reproduces by creating. To become a god, you have to go through all of the things that a god would know, or, you know, a thing, so that you have to experience every single thing. And perhaps there's billions of, you know, the reproduction cycle or whatever. There's billions and billions of offspring that comes from this kind of thing. So maybe that is the reason. It's something I've often thought about. But again, how can I possibly know? So the idea then of what are gods, like who is Mercury, or who is Apollo, or who is Hecate, or Jesus, or any of these things, what are they? And I've always, these things to me are all ideas. And when I say that, I don't mean to downplay what any of these things are. I mean to upplay what ideas are. And ideas are possibly the most powerful thing that you will ever come across in your life. Like, there's a quote, and I don't know who it's by, but it says the most powerful thing in the world is an idea whose time has come. And I certainly believe that. So by saying that, I think Apollo is an idea. I think it's a fucking amazing idea, more powerful idea than you could ever imagine. And they're kind of like, because they're all situated in this consciousness, this cloud of consciousness, as we said, for want of a better description, which is the cloud of consciousness, I would see as chaos, as primordial, you know, as potentiality. That's, you know, this is the chaos, the chaos of the Greek chaos, not the anarchy kind of thing that the trolling thing that it's become. So the gods are situated in this kind of both within and without. Like, they're not in the world, in that's the thing that we see around us, again, physical world that we have around us, but they're still within this bed of consciousness, this cloud of consciousness, as are people who have died, because they're ideas that have now moved from one area of the consciousness into the next thing. But they can be interacted with, say, just as ideas. You know, you can invoke the idea in a kind of an NLP sense, try on the clothes or the feeling of what it would like to be Apollo, and then go out into the world from that perspective, or engage with, like, dead people in that kind of way, that the idea of them has stuck around. Like when people say, "Oh, I'm," dead people are always still around. Like when George Harrison's talking about Roy Orbison to Tom Petty, he says, like, "Don't worry, he's around. Like he's still around." And I think he meant, I'm not speaking for George Harrison, but that the idea of him is around, and that's always can be accessed, and always you can always interact with that, and you can always, like, you can bounce things off that. So even if you don't come from the whole thing of that there's an actual where the dead people go when they die, kind of thing, place where to go, the idea of them hangs around for a long while, and that certainly can be interacted with, and you can kind of get inspiration, or you can get what's the words? You can bounce idea. What would that, like, if your grandmother's dead, like, and you have a problem, you go, well, what would my grandmother say about that? You can kind of invoke her in that kind of a way, or evoke her, whatever way you want to look at that. And so that's kind of a bit like Alan Moore's idea space, in a way, that he says that we're surrounded by this idea space, and that the easy thing is to, from a creative point of view, is to grab the ideas that are closest to you. But the important ideas, or the groundbreaking ideas, or the big ideas, are further away, and you have to work harder to get them. And you could kind of blend it all into the kind of astral plane, or the etheric fields, or the Akashic library, and all of these, this pure information. It probably does work more on a more informational model than any of these other models. Like it's the entirety is information, or potentiality of information. And then, so we have to come to think of the one, what is magic? Magic is kind of using your, in my opinion, right now on this day, is you as the focus of consciousness within a huge consciousness that has seemed to be dreaming this dream. Magic is doing something that causes a ripple, or something to change around you, possibly to move you into one of these other kind of dimensions, or a different choice, or align you closer to your greater good, or further away from your greater good, depending on what you're doing. Greater good in this case would be whatever the goal is of, is it to be a master of wisdom? Is it to be a perfected person? Whatever the goal is. And so they're like injections into consciousness, where you have made a decision to change the dream, or whatever the word is, that this reality that we abide in, or seem to be focused from within. And the interaction with spirits, or gods, or any of those things, again, is to in order to change this dream. And I think that's my approach to it. So when I do a sigil, what I'm trying to do is trying to change the dream, based on the idea that reality isn't a reductionist materialism, that there is no out there, that it's all, that we're all one. And it's that quote from the Book of the Law that I know I'm going to get wrong. I must have it here in my notes somewhere. The cabs is in the coup, not the coup in the cabs. And I thought that was mumbo jumbo for ages, but it's the cabs is the light within you, the LVX, the lux, that kind of thing. And the coup is the garment, or the body that you surround yourself with. And it's the reminder that the body is part of the soul, not a body, like we are told kind of in, say, Christianness, that you have a body which has a soul. The body is part of the soul. The divine is not outside of you, but it's you or within, kind of divine. It's that idea that we're situated in this huge consciousness, rather than I am a body that has consciousness. And that we've in some way can interact and change these things. And I think from a magical point of view, seeing it more as a wave field, or a cloud of consciousness, or a dream, or a game, or these things, seems more plausible to have a magical outlook in that than the reductionist materialist. Because magic doesn't work in a reductionist materialist universe, because things aren't connected, apart from that whole spooky non-local thing of Einstein that he didn't like. But that you can't really interact with people from a distance, or you can't change things. Magic just doesn't work in a reductionist materialist world. What it does in an idealism, it does in solipsism, but you're fooling yourself. Then you have animism, which it's you're a haunted universe. Everything is inherently alive, non-human people, and all that. And I think I'm fine with that too. It's probably semantics, in that if you think that everything is ultimately ideas, including yourself, God, spirits, non-human persons, all of these things are ideas, it still for me would fall under idealism than animism, because I think ultimately that whole thing, we are one, there's one body of consciousness that has separated itself some way into focus, small, intense focus things we call humans or non-human people. That you can also have these things of ideas, which are God, spirits, and all of things that in some way either have been created by humans or maybe existed before humans. I know Gordon White has talked about Ganesha. He feels that, at least in one of his blog posts, that Ganesha seems to not have been, from his dealings with it, has not been created by human thought. That it seems to be a separate entity, which I would say was in this greater consciousness, chaotic, primordial potentiality field that's floating somewhere that we're all part of. Or the cab's in the coo and the coo's not in the cabs, where we are embodied within consciousness, not a person who has consciousness. And of course, then you go into the whole Jung, the collective unconsciousness. Is this the greater consciousness, or do humans have their own kind of separation within this bigger consciousness? Do animals, and you have to do packs of wolves have a certain consciousness that they are just, sewn into, as well as an individuality, and is there sectors, is there levels of these things? It's all kind of, I don't know what the answers, and it's all speculation, and it's all very woo-woo, but it's kind of how I approach things and how I see it, and it works for me in the sense of that works particularly creative for me, and that, like going back to Alan Moore's idea space, if that really works in how I approach things, and about how, in a sense, you channel things, not in a channeled kind of Alice Bailey way, or Edgar Cayce type thing, but you allow the ideas to come into you. And that's what is it, Jung says that people don't have ideas, ideas have people, and I certainly think that's true. I've talked about it before, that letting the whole idea of an idea come into you and getting out of the way, particularly when I've been writing and when I've been drawing and stuff like that, just kind of get out of the way. And it's not channeling, because it's you doing. You're certainly doing it. It's not like the Book of the Law where you have a voice over your shoulder, saying things and you're writing it down. It's allowing this thing to happen through you. That's not what I mean. Anyone who's ever written a book or ever written a short story or anything where they've allowed the characters to do their own thing knows exactly what I'm on about. So yeah, that's kind of a lot going on there, and obviously there's a lot to be refined, and there's a lot to be kind of thought a bit more and expanded about, and probably things thrown out. That the part of the that multiverse thing, the branches, the choices thing, there's definitely work need to be done on that, because that whole jumping thing annoys me. I think it could be just the nomenclature of it all, but yeah, kind of moving through the different choices, or every time you make a choice in the universe in some way is created, but they're all together, all in one, and you can kind of move through them all, and there is one on one end of the scale that looks vastly different from the other end, or maybe doesn't, maybe it's a circle, who knows. Anyway, that's my brain is fried after all that, but yeah, just trying to get my thoughts together, rather than have these kind of vague things in my head, try and articulate them and kind of delineate them, I suppose, and put a boundary around them with what do I actually think, so that once I can kind of look at it, I can then refine it or throw things out or whatever. So yeah, idealism, magical universe, something to do with the multiverse, and magic being injections, gods, spirits. We're all ideas too. So I'm not just separating humans from gods, spirits, or the 40 servants, or all of these things. Tommy Kelly is an idea as well. And we're all abiding in this huge cloud of chaotic consciousness that for some reason is doing a thing. So yeah. So that was Tommy Kelly Podcast, and if you enjoyed that, then I suggest that you go to TommyKellyPodcast.com and check out all the other episodes. My name is Tommie, Tommy, Kelly spelled normally, podcast spelled whatever way you want to spell it, but the normal way is podcast. I always mix that up and type that as podcasts, which I enjoy and often don't want to change it. If you go to adventuresinwoo.com, you will get all of my stuff. Everything's there, from my comics to the 47s, which is a magical divination system I came up with, which people are finding really useful. I made it selfishly just for myself because it's something I wanted to use, but other people have found it cool and interesting and it works for them. And hopefully that previous rant in some way can help people understand my approach to what I think the 47s are. But again, if that's not what you think the 47s are, or what you think magic is, or the universe is, then that, don't feel you have to agree with me, or indeed don't feel you have to disagree with me. Just, if everyone is entitled to have their own thoughts and to see these things. If you think the 47s of magic works in a completely different way, great, awesome, keep at it, it's working for you. I'm on all the social medias. It's mostly at Tommy Kelly, but it's Tommy Kelly Artist on Facebook. And if you'd like to help me financially, then you can go to my Patreon and send me some money every month to continue doing these things. In return, I will give you PDFs. We do weekly rituals. We're doing the Journey, which is a year-long shadow working magic ritual thing using servitors, which is going really well. And the good thing about Patreon and what I'm enjoying is that because it's a closed sort of system, and anyone who's actually got into it is obviously into these subjects, or into my thoughts on these things at least. Excuse me. So I can feel kind of a bit more open about talking about these kind of things, which is good, and that you're not have to worry about, some fundamental religious person coming in and having an argument with you and stuff. You can just talk about it in, company. So I'm going to be doing an awful lot more talking about things behind the closed door of Patreon. But there's loads going on there, and if you're interested, go check it out. You can check that out by going to TommyKelly.com, TommieKelly.com. And that brings you straight to the Patreon. There's loads of stuff on the right hand side. You can see all the rewards and all of those things. So, good people of the internet, here we are yet again at the end of another podcast. And what I would wish for you is that whatever your worldview is, that I hope it nourishes you and comforts you rather than scares you and horrifies you. Because life's tough, and it can be hard, and it can be scary, and it can be lonely, and all of these things. And if we have a kind of a cosmology or a worldview, or a view of the universe that's inherently nasty, or, not something that's encouraging or comforting, then that can be quite sad and quite tough. So what I wish for you this week is to see that the universe or consciousness has your back, and there is a conspiracy to make you happy going on by the powers that be. And may this show you a sign of that, and may you have a wonderful week, and may all of the things you are working on come to fruition, and be well.